So, very good morning, friends, and greetings from Brand Club Gujarat. To introduce Brand Club Gujarat is a club of and for the like-minded individuals involved in the various facets of advertising and marketing communication. The mission of the club is to create forums and events to help its members improve their professional competencies, thereby raising the standards of advertising in the state. Since more than a decade now, Brand Club Gujarat has been conducting fruitful sessions and taking effective initiatives for the benefit of marketing communication fraternity. In 2021, we introduced our flagship event, Brand Fest Season 1, followed by Season 2 and 3 in 2022 and 23 respectively. We are delighted to present you the Season 4 of Brand Fest 2024, which is this time in association with the esteemed Ahmedabad Management Association. As a keynote speaker to the session 4, we have someone from whom I am too small a person to speak about him. I feel highly privileged to introduce one of my ideal and inspiration, Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan. His blessed presence itself has taken this fest to a greater and new heights. He is the icon who always fuel our energy to do something better and greater. To introduce him, Mr. Gopalakrishnan studied physics at Kolkata University, engineering at IIT Kharagpur, and attended the advanced management program at Harvard Business School. He has been a professional manager from 1967. He has served as chairman of Unilever Arabia, as MD of Brook Bond Lipton, and vice chairman of Hindustan Lever, as a director of Tata Sons and several Tata companies, and also an independent director of Press Trust of India. He serves as independent director to PTI. He is actively engaged in both instructional and inspirational speaking. He has authored more than 20 books. Sir, we are really thankful to you for accepting our invitation. And the subject is too small to speak about it. So I'll introduce the subject as that it's an interesting topic which he will be speaking on today. Brands and enterprises are living entities. All yours, sir, now. And I would request audience to please mute their mics so that we can all hear properly. Thank you, sir. Thank you once again for being there, sir.
Thank you, Sanjay, and thank you to Brand Club for inviting me to come and speak to your audience today. I noticed that we have crossed 100 now in terms of attendance, and probably what makes it interesting and worthwhile for me to be able to talk to you on a subject which I believe is very important. I emphasize its importance because when I mentioned the name of the subject, brands and enterprises are living entities, most people nod their head in quick agreement. But when I look around as to what's happening in the world of brands and enterprises, the way people practice their art seems to be the opposite, which is treating it like a machine. And perhaps I should speak in three parts. First is to touch upon what is the living enterprise and the machine enterprise or brands difference and the distinctions. The second is to explain why I feel that the world of business has shifted from the living enterprise attitude and thinking to the machine enterprise thinking. And the third, I would like to cap it up a little bit by touching upon probably India's greatest industrialist, Jamshedji Tata, whose practices allow us to reflect on what it takes to create a living enterprise or brand. So those are the three little parts in which I wish to speak to you. So firstly, the difference between living enterprise and a machine enterprise. You know, if you look at the history of management, the whole emphasis has been on achieving greater and greater efficiency. So in the old days, we had taking work to the man rather than the man to the work. Henry Ford's assembly line production technique, which dramatically increased production and reduced costs. Later on came the time when people talked of industrial engineering and how to get more productivity out of your machines and men. Then came automation, which enabled you to eliminate the human drudgery and bring in machines. And latterly, it has been digitization. And what's work in progress now is artificial intelligence. So you can see that there is a relentless thrust, and rightly so. I think it's a very good thing towards achieving greater and greater efficiency out of the man machine system. On the flip side, when we look at the concept of a living enterprise, you realize that you can extract more and more efficiency out of a brand or enterprise through increasing productivity 2%, 3% year after year and extracting more and more. But if you think of a machine, there comes a stage when the machine parts break down and you're not able to extract more efficiency out of it. Or you have tried to extract the next bit of efficiency through a method which is alien to the design of the machine or the strength of its components. As contrast this to a living machine or a living enterprise or living brand, there also you are trying to extract more and more efficiency. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I applaud the idea of extracting more and more out of a particular enterprise or brand. But all of us will remember, no, all of us may not remember. I will remind you that in 1954, until 1954, nobody thought that the racing time for a 1 mile can be less than 4 minutes. At the Ifley Road track, Roger Bannister ran in, and he ran in under 4 minutes, or exactly 4 minutes. And that was like Gukesh winning the chess grandmaster at the youngest age. It was a breakthrough. Roger Bannister was a doctor, actually, a physiologist, who was a runner for hobby. And when he ran it in 4 minutes, understandably, there were a lot of accolades. Roger Bannister was a brand. He was, and even today, people say, don't be Roger Bannister. And at that time, many people commented on whether this is a freak or 4 minutes per mile can be further improved, more efficient. And a lot of people at that time, I was a young boy in school at that time, wrote, and people included nutritionists, physiologists, pulmonary specialists, racing experts on the human muscle. All of them, or many of them, I would say, gave an opinion that it cannot be further improved. This is the end of it, because they were thinking it's a machine. What actually happened after that is, of course, many other runners in subsequent times, until the South Korean runner has now improved it from 3 minutes to 3 minutes, 43 seconds. And what has come into play is it's the same machine. If I take the metaphor of a machine, muscles, legs, strength, but human motivation and aspiration have come into play. And that's what enabled the South Koreans to be able to run it in 3 minutes, 43 seconds. And of course, as you would expect, people are trying to get 3 minutes, 42 seconds and 41 seconds to further improve. I bring this example in to say that efficiency is highly desirable and must be sought after, but along with, parallel to, making things more effective. Pure efficiency leads to a breakdown of the brand or the enterprise. Pure effectiveness without efficiency will not allow it to survive. So you need the left foot and the right foot to work together. And this is, it may seem like a very ordinary point to make, and it is indeed very ordinary. But last night in the UK, a very important person in the field of business and management died, Charles Handy. And Charles Handy, he was born, I think, 1932, and he was 92, therefore, when he died yesterday. And Peter Drucker, who was born maybe 20 years before Charles Handy and who died about 20 years ago, are the two doyens on whom everybody, not just me, but my father's generation, have been raised in the field of management and business. And both of these people had some similarities. And paying tribute to Charles Handy, I just want to say that he was thinking of management through an organizational behavior lens. And so did Peter Drucker. They were less focused on the automation and the mechanics, but more on the people side. Now, think of an advertising agency. If you run an advertising agency to extract more and more creative out of it, most advertising people will tell you that's not possible. But the advertising industry has divided into two parts, the creative types and the operations types, and really you can't do one without the other. Both of them began their career. Charles Handy, after his studies in Oxford, I think, began his career in Shell, the oil company. But after 5 or 10 years, he moved on to become an academic at London Business School and various other places. And Peter Drucker also started his life first as a journalist, then as an equity analyst in an insurance company. And maybe after 5, 10, 15 years, moved on to academia. Charles Handy wrote 21 books, so far as I am aware, and Peter Drucker wrote 39 books. So when Sanjay introduced me as having written 20 books, it looked as though it's the end of the road. But if I choose these people as my role models, perhaps there is more to be written. Charles Handy made the important point, and this is why I'm mentioning Charles Handy, because he stated something which was seen as very incisive at the time he said it. Long surviving companies have a soul. Now, a machine doesn't have a soul. A human being has a soul. And by soul, he went on to explain institutions where people have respect for others and ability to make people happy. Now, you don't associate enterprise and brands with happiness. You just want to sell more, get more revenue, get more profit out of it. That's efficiency. And as I've heard it said, when you run an organization, you must create an organization which is efficient, but also encompasses within its culture respect for people working in the organization or with the organization and ability to make people happy. And on the flip side, Peter Drucker, he was self-deprecating. He said, everybody calls me a guru. I don't know, I'm not a guru. Probably it's an alternate word for a charlatan. What he meant by that was a bit self-deprecating, but he made the point that I'm just explaining things that are common sense, and you all seem to be reveling in it. So I want to leave you with this little discussion between a machine and a living enterprise, that if you run an institution or a brand, please read wherever I say company or institution, I include a brand in it, because a brand is nothing but the output or the property of a particular institution. You have to have, and you have to ask yourself the question, does the institution or brand where I'm working have inayat, ibadat, and insaniyat? If it doesn't have the three eyes, then you're not using it as a living metaphor. You're using the machine metaphor. As most of us know, insaniyat is being just and fair. Ibadat is about respect to people, and inayat is about equity. So if you can't run an organization with equity, justness, fairness, and treating people as people, then obviously it's not right. Now, why do I feel that perhaps this is a point worth emphasizing? Maybe a critic can argue that it's happening everywhere. Well, the first thing is, over the last 50 years of my career, companies have failed at a remarkably rapid rate. Storied names, big names, they don't exist. If you look at the Fortune 500 list, it's rapidly changing. We all know the numbers, so I'm not going to give statistics or names of companies. But the mortality rate, if I may use the human expression, is changing very, very rapidly as far as companies are concerned. So also with brands. I mean, everybody will think of old brands, advertising agencies will think of old brands. They will look at sepia tinted old press advertisements, but those things don't exist anymore. So these are examples of companies or institutions or brands which have failed to keep pace with what's happening around them. And that's what I mean by the human metaphor. Now, you can take a mechanistic view of this and say that's inevitable. I think it was Richard Foster who brought up the theory of the creative destruction. He said death is inevitable for a company or a brand, and that's how you renew. It is true. I don't argue the case for immortality, for sure. But I think it is incumbent upon us as thinking people to be able to say, how can I extend the life of this brand or this company? Creating a short-lived brand or company and extracting money out of it is one route to take. And I'm not here to sit in judgment on whether that's good or bad. I just happen to have my thinking and my training uh, not aligned with that sort of idea. Think of how we treat human beings in your own family or in your social circle. People invite you to come and celebrate the arrival of a new baby in their house. And if you're the uncle or the old aunt in the family, you'll always go there and say Dirghayush Bhavan, in whichever language you're speaking. Your first thought when you meet a newborn baby is, may it live long. Now, it may or may not live long, depending on the genetics and the circumstances. That's not the subject of discussion. But the desire is to live long. But when you create a brand or create a new company, a startup, is your desire for it to live long? Because if it is, then you must understand the principles of longevity. Now, with a human being, grandmother will tell you, don't give it this food, give it that food, make the child exercise, turn it on its stomach and let it burp. The rules have been evolved over millennia of grandmothers who have. And so the rules of good health are known. It's a different matter that by the time the child is 15 or 20, he or she may not follow those rules. But who trains you in long-lived brands and long-lived companies? I don't think it's part of the regular pedagogy. There's the odd case study that you might read if you're going to a B school or you have a boss who's sharing with you. But the secret mantra of long-living brands and companies, I call it the Ayurvedic treatment, the Ayurvedic approach. Ayurveda, as you know, means the science of long life, or ikigai, to use a more contemporary and interesting expression, is something that is worth thinking about. And top-class professionals like the people in this audience, I thought it's worthy of mention that usually in our own personal lives and in our professional lives, you'll find that it is not some obscure truth that we've overlooked, but the well-known truths which have come down for centuries that we are overlooking. And I am arguing the case for long-living enterprises because it is our task as professionals in branding or startups to create companies that have the potential to live long. Bad circumstances may take over and they may end up having a short life, but not because your niyat is wrong. Your niyat, which is your strategic intent, has to be to create long life. Just like your niyat when you bless a child in the family or your social circle is for the child to have a long life. And I think the aspect of giving long life to an enterprise or a brand, I'll give you one small example from the world of branding. If you don't know what to do with the Me Too brand, in the old days, David Ogilvy used to say, if you have nothing to say, don't sing it. But, today you just get a celebrity. You get a cricketer to recommend life insurance. You get a film star to recommend underwear, and so on and so forth. That's a cop-out. Now, I'm not generally against celebrity advertising, but I am against the lack of depth or thinking about, will this last long? And I'll give you one example. I won't mention the name of the brand so that I don't cause offense. They wanted to show that their product is very dependable. And they went and got Rahul Dravid to explain something about the product and say, I'm Mr. Dependable, and hoping that that will transfer on to the product. After 5 years of the contract, Rahul Dravid got a little more money from somebody else. So he went to a competitor and said, I'm dependable. This is what I mean by saying not imbuing with the principles of long life, but taking shortcuts. Or likewise with enterprises. I think it's very good that India is the world startup capital or amongst the world startup capitals. And it is very good that Indians, young people have ideas, they got risk appetite, and the ecosystem for people to develop new organization enterprise is definitely very positive in the country. But many of them are just starting up. It's like having another baby. It's not helpful if you can't imbue it with principles of uh, good HR policies and good governance. And if you create a 24 billion valuation of an enterprise supposed to be in educational technology, and then it collapses, and it's not the only one. I'm not going into individual names for obvious reasons. Then I think it's a pity. And it's a great pity because you say I'm employing 100,000 people or 50,000 people, and 50 or 100,000 people are suddenly without a job. And that's not a good way to create an ecosystem for both brands and for enterprises. So, what are the principles that one can learn? And nature is a very good teacher. Nature is the silent teacher. You know, when Shackleton went to the Antarctica, and subsequently people went to trace Shackleton's journey, they said you arrive on a place and you're in shunya. There is not a noise, there is no light, there is no map, there is no compass. You feel emptiness, and the loud noise of the stillness gets you. That's what deep thinking about brands and enterprises does to you. Because if you go into I suspect that the insights that a Steve Jobs or a Elon Musk, you may or may not like the guy, that's a separate issue. But the creativity that comes out of being able to be self-aware and dealing with emptiness and creating something out of that emptiness, which is a credit you have to hand out to people like Steve Jobs. And I'm including Elon Musk, though I understand some people may have a different opinion based on his pyrotechnics. But let's leave that aside for a minute. We're talking about sheer creativity and guts. I think you've got to give it to these guys that they are able to enter that space. And I'm encouraging that people who create brands and enterprises must ask themselves the question, what does it take to get to that space and be really sustainably creative, not flashily creative. Flashy creativeness everybody can do. And that's why I say that nature gives you many good examples of that. And that has, in fact, been a very strong influence in all my own writings and my books, where the inspiration of nature. Now, come to, I don't want to speak all the time, so I'll speak for 10 minutes more. And then Sanjay, perhaps, if the audience has a different point of view, I'd welcome it. I also learn from these kinds of events. I just want to say about what is the important thing about an enterprise or a brand. And what is your purpose? Why are you doing this? Now, that's become a bit of a jargon now, purpose, business. What I think C.K. Prahlad or Gary Hamel called strategic intent. I call it niyat, giving it a little Indian touch. Niyat comes from the Arabic word niya, which means what is your real purpose? So when William Hesketh Lever created Sunlight and Lifebuoy soap, people would ask him, why are you making this bubbly stuff into a cake and then sending it all around the world? And he made a statement, which he never called business purpose, by the way. In those days, the word wasn't invented. But he said, I want to bring hygiene and cleanliness to the millions all around the world. And this he said in 1890. And frankly, if you look at Hindustan Lever, they are still doing the same work. They use more modern words for it, but they want to clean up people. They want to bring hygiene to people. They want to bring beauty to people. They want to bring good skin to people, good hair to people. So it's a very, very long-term, durable sort of purpose if you want to clean up people. And Hindustan Lever is still doing exactly the same thing. When Jamshedji Tata began his life, which is about the same time, 1880s, and he made a good amount of money in his first two ventures. And then the governor of what was then called Bombay Presidency, what we today call Maharashtra, I suppose, um, Lord Ray. There's a railway station in Bombay called Ray Road, and that's named after that governor. Uh, Invited him for some function. Uh, Jamshedji Tata began his speech. He was not a great public speaker, by the way. He was not fond of speaking. But he made a speech in which he opened his speech by saying, Providence has blessed me with far more money than I believe I should have earned. You see, when a great leader who's made big money, and in those days, Jamshedji Tata was the Mukesh Ambani or the Adani. I mean it in terms of the amount of wealth, not or being the wealthiest, not in terms of personality. To say that Providence has blessed me, he is accepting that I have played a role, but circumstances also conspired me to success. And then he went on to say that because of that providence, he has made lots of money. And because he's made lots of money, he believes he is a conduit for this money to go back to society. And various things have been done subsequent to that. But he's put community center speed. And throughout the history of Tata's, I can talk of Lever and Tata only because those are the ones I'm familiar with. I don't want to pretend, even inadvertently, any exceptionalism of Tata, by the way, as though they are special. I mean, there are a lot of fantastic industrialists and entrepreneurs who have also started with great niyat and continue to do so. Godrej, Bajaj, TVS, the South. So don't mistake me that I'm not trying to put Tata or Hindustan Lever on a pedestal, but I'm merely saying that we must look, for example, the people who had long life and who had niyat. And because of the right niyat, they are able to have the right conduct, niti. And because they have the right conduct, they are able to have the right niyam. So if you think of it, strategic intent followed by good conduct, followed by good rules and good procedures. Many startups and brands today start the other way around. Set up the rules, we'll deal with the other two later. And frankly, when you raise your kids in your family, you don't say, I'll teach them values later on in life after they are 15, because there's too much other work to be done when they're younger. You start right from the time they're children to teach them those things. So there are basically four kinds of companies or brands in the world, and they adduce to the acronym HEAD, head. I'm very fascinated with this nomenclature and this categorization of companies. H stands for heroic. And I'll come back in a moment to say what is heroic. E stands for excellence. A stands for altruistic. And D stands for discovery. And most companies, most brands fall into more or less dominantly into one of these, though the other three aspects will also be there. It's like a pie chart, whether the H is the larger share, or E is the larger share, or A is the larger share, or D is the larger share. So if I take an example, a heroic company wants to do something, yeah, dunya ko dikhane ka hai. I would say Reliance is a heroic company. They want to do things that nobody has done before. Dominantly, there are other aspects of E, A, and D that also might characterize them. A discovery company is one which says, this can't be done, I want to do it. I mean, and Elon Musk says, I'll send a private rocket to the moon. I consider that to be sort of discovery. In his time, when Vishwesharaya built the first long bridge in the 1850s, I think it was a discovery. Nobody knew how to build a bridge. E is an excellence company. Most companies and brands fall into that model, excellence. They want to do things better, and they are the ones who are constantly looking for improving their efficiency, productivity by 2%, 1% every year. Most companies are in the E category. Tatas are included in E category, though they have many elements of H and D. And of course, Tatas are definitely altruistic, but there are very few altruistic companies. Most of them are trying to make more and more money in the shortest possible time. And I hope I don't sound, cynical, but is too much profit possible? Whenever I talk to young people, they say, "Oh, the more the profit, the better, so long as you earn it legitimately." And I ask myself, to live, you need oxygen. Where do you get your oxygen from? They say, I get it from the air. So how much oxygen is there in the air? It's 20%. Now, if I give you 100% pure oxygen through an oxygen cylinder, you'll be dead. So if you have too much profit, then you can die. And that's what happens to business houses and brands. Too much success, then whether it's in a family business or as Warren Buffett has said, I think I'd like to leave enough money for my children to be able to do anything that they want to do useful in life. But I don't want to leave so much money that they can do nothing in life. And that's what happens when you have too much money and if you flaunt that money. So the book that I referred to, I'll close with that, Jamshedji Tata, came out of this inspiration because I have had the privilege. Now, if you say, what is India's most valuable brand, it is Tata. I think the last valuation by Brand Finance or somebody places the value at 25 to 30 billion dollars. Now, this has been built like the compounding nature of business over 150 years. It's India's most valuable brand. But if you look for lessons on brand management from Jamshedji Tata's time, you'll find nothing. Because the principles of branding were not what they adopted, as many people do nowadays. They practiced what is good branding. And the Zoroastrian um, uh, motto guided them. And if you go to any Tata office, you'll find this motto written somewhere or the other. Kuma, Bhukta, Havarsta. That's in their language, the Zoroastrian language. Avesta, as it's called. Kuma means good words. Bhukta means good deeds. And Havarsta means good thoughts. Good words, good deeds, good thoughts. So you have a motto which then guides what you do and want to do. And this is what I'm pushing for. So if even when you're creating brands or companies, has it got some great niyat, some great purpose? That's very important. The second aspect is a brand will survive or a company will survive if you can pass on those good values over. Now, Tata are today having the 7th or 8th generation of successors. How do you keep that Puma, Foresta, Hukta, Havasta alive and Tata's true to it? And the book that we have written, which you see behind me in the background about Jamshedji Tata, is not a biography of Jamshedji Tata. It is about how did he create a set of values which was kept alive. And of course, brand people uh, are so conscious of it that they have produced books like Lessons from Long-Lasting Brands and Lessons from Brands that have survived 100 years. And I think those are good things to study. Many people feel, I think one of your listeners has put in a question in the chat box, which just suddenly popped up, that in today's fast-paced times, everybody's looking for profit quickly. That is true, but you don't have to bring life to a complete halt to follow values. Would you say that because it's fast-paced and a lot of pressure on children, I'll raise my children without values? I haven't met such a parent. It may happen inadvertently, but certainly not by design. Every parent tries to give his or her child the best possible values, and they may or may not be successful, but They try. And that's what we owe. We don't say that the world is fast paced. So if I raise my children without values, regard profit as equal to values. Profit without value will vanish very soon. Profit with values will last long. And that's the basic message, especially to the person who wrote a question in the chat box, I would like to leave you with. And in closing and opening it up for any comments or questions, I want to close with one thing that I've learned and I found very, very interesting. And I particularly commented to the brand club because this is your dhanda, this is your life. Create companies or brands which are admired, but also create companies or brands which are loved. All companies that are admired are not loved. All brands that are loved are not admired. And if you can't have evoke in your partner, in your customer, in your business ally, a company which is admired and loved. I ask you today, after the session is over, just sit down and try to write the names of 10 companies which are admired or 10 brands. And think of 10 companies or 10 brands which are admired and loved. And you see the value of the exercise that I'm talking about. Making a company that's admired is not difficult. If you're in the pink papers every morning, with or without controversy, very soon some people start admiring. If you reward shareholders very quickly, they will admire you. That's what's happening to our startups. Admiration doesn't lead to love. And if brand people, and I include companies and brands together, can create entities which are admired and loved, they would have been true to their profession. And that's what I would recommend to the brand club or your brand fest for it to occupy your agenda and attention. I could go on and on, but I don't think I want to. I should give you 10 minutes to ask any questions, especially those who disagree. Never cop out on fundamental values because life is turning very fast. That's the biggest cop out you can have. But I'll stop there. Sanjay Babu, thank you for inviting me to speak to your distinguished audience. I noticed there are 140 people here. There must be at least a few questions which can engage us for the next remaining 10 minutes or whatever.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, very inspiring. So we are open to questions. Anybody who wishes to ask a question can unmute and also can be visible on the video and ask the question. Yeah. Anybody?
Sir, I have a question.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Rikin Shah.
Yeah, sir. So I was the one who sent you the message in the chat box. So my question was specifically that if I am a small company, I am a startup, and the world is tough right now. I mean, expenses and everything is so high, salaries are going very high. And definitely, I wish to run a company with all the ethics and everything. So definitely want to create a company like a Tata, but where employee loyalty standards are changing, profit requirements are changing. So how to survive in this situation? Definitely, I won't say that one should not, but then how is the question?
I think Rikin, is that the name?
Yes.
The question you have to ask is, are circumstances handed to you on a platter or do you make your circumstance?
One should make, I believe, not.
One should try to influence. You may not succeed, but if you don't influence your circumstance. So if somebody says, I'm of a lower income group, I live 6 people in a small flat of 300 square feet. Yet that family manages to produce a world-class cricketer. Or I'm just taking sometimes a musician. Or since Gukesh has just won the World Chess Championship, it comes from a rather ordinary family. So people who influence their circumstance, not control, are the ones who succeed. And I would commend you to think about how can I influence that circumstance. I know there are some companies, which I call small giants, for lack of a better word, which are loved and respected. You never heard of them, but they're loved and respected. 25 years ago, two young fellows, one accountant and one chemical engineer, joined our company, Hindustan Lever, to do some summer project. They seemed bright, so whoever they were working for offered them a job in Hindustan Lever. They both were from very middle class families. They said, no, we want to become an entrepreneur. They set up a company which is today a public company. It's listed. And they are not well known. They're never in the newspaper, because being in the newspaper is not a sign of success. And people love them. And I think there are others. So I would commend you to think about whether circumstances are given to you or you overcome and create your circumstance. Thank you, Rikin, for your question.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Anybody else wish to ask a question? Anubhaji. Okay, sir, I have a question.
There's some
Yeah,
questions in
Sanjay
the
ji,
chat
I
box.
have a little doubt in my mind as Mr. Gopalakrishnan was talking about altruism, that nowadays we see a lot of entrepreneurs, once they have made their millions, then they kind of turn philanthropist, right? But as per the principles that were kind of uh, alluded today, the principles have to come first, the niyat has to come first, and then the niyams comes the last. But it looks like a lot of these philanthropists are now the other way around. They do businesses, earn money, and then they turn philanthropists. Any views on that one, Mr. Gopalakrishnan?
No, there's nothing wrong with that. I have no
Correct.
objection, because pet bhuka hai, so don't talk to me about all this stuff. If you've earned your money, if you've earned your money with dignity and principles, and usually those who do that are non-controversial. They may make the odd mistake once in a while, something may happen, but some people are perpetually in controversy.
That is right.
And I call them, in Bombay, you have some characters who are always in the news for one thing or another. And those people, if they give to philanthropy, fine. But I think it's important that if you spend your time with reasonable principles, there's no perfect principle. So I'm not arguing for complete lack of controversy, but with minimum controversy and ethically and with principle. And then you made your billion or 10 billion or 100 billion and you give it for charity. That's wonderful. I'm not arguing against it at all. But if you didn't have the principles in the first place, you see, it's only those who cut corners who get into controversy, right?
Correct.
To me, being controversial perpetually is almost a signal that the step is close, flying very close to the sun. Now, if you think that's the right way to do business, good luck. I'm not judging you. I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And it also kind of reinforces the circularity of capitalism, right?
Exactly. You used a very lovely expression. I like it. You look at Andrew Carnegie, you look at John D. Rockefeller. In their day and time, they had a few controversies. In the case of Carnegie Steel, there was firing in the factory. In the case of John D. Rockefeller, he was considered to be the world's richest man. But finally, at the end of it, when they made their millions or billions or whatever, they have done some wonderful things. Look at Bill Gates. I mean, look at Microsoft. I mean, people in IT industry will tell you how Microsoft was maneuvering and ruthless, but not in a manner which now AI is coming into the same screen, and we'll have to see. So I'm saying, don't try to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. Even Tatas have controversies. Once in a while, something will happen. People will say, you are Neera Radia, or or something else, or Cyrus Mystery. Okay. But if you're perpetually there, then it's a problem.
Correct.
And if you made money and you give it away, that's wonderful. We need such companies. That's the point I'm making.
Yeah.
And we need to do it sustainably. Especially in Ahmedabad, there are many industrialists who are fantastic in their day and time, but those enterprises and empires have vanished. And I'm arguing not only for having great principles, but having sustainable principles.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, somebody, what strategy? Okay. Yeah, should I, sir?
Yeah, who's it?
Yeah, this is Sanjay here.
Yeah, Sanjay, go ahead.
Yeah, sir, you had worked for long with Tata Group, many years, and especially with Sri Ratan Tata. So I would like to, have some of the experience which you had, which is very inspiring for the audience here, which you might have learned from him.
Well, much has been said, much has been written. So I don't know if I'm going to say anything which is new and novel. But Ratan Tata is a very good example. He was not without some controversies during his tenure. And if you want to be critical, you can look at his controversies. I just mentioned Cyrus Mistry, Neera Radia. And there are people who feel this way or that way. And I respect everybody's opinion. But you have to look at the man in totality. And in totality, he was what I call a sustainable, humane, and enlightened leader. Success came to him because he was sustainable, humane, and enlightened. He is not that a successful leader became sustainable, humane, and enlightened. The other way around. Which is the cause and which is the effect in the circularity that Anubhav Kapoor referred to. And I think if you do the right things in the right time, in the right way, then the right things will happen. But the approach that we tend to take is, let's make the right things happen and then we'll put the rest of it into place. वो नहीं होता है. And that is a lesson, since you said, tell us from your experience. Ratan Tata believed that if you do the right things in the right way at the right time, then the right outcomes will happen. And in doing the right things in the right time, in the right way, once in a while, then you may get into some controversy. So long as if you're perpetually in controversy, I think it's a problem.
Yeah.
So I hope I've answered your question. I can go on and on about Ratan Tata, but
Yeah.
if there's a specific question, then I'm very happy to do so.
It's like, sir, more you know, more you adore.
Exactly. I know you're a Bengali, but I don't know if there are any other Bengalis here, but Janar Made Ojaner Korechi Shondar. Within what is known, I find unknown things. That is the secret of branding. And Tagore did study branding. He didn't talk about branding, but he's quite a guy, I have to say.
The best part is that he had no enemies.
Well, he had his critics, of course. But
so any other questions from
any
audience?
other question or comment? I think I've satisfied your audience.
Yeah. So thank you very much, sir, for your enriching presence to Brandfest. I'll remain grateful to you for gracing this forum, and we look forward to have you again and again to Brandfest and bless us with that. Thank you so much, sir.
Have a good conference to all of you. Bye.
Yeah, thank you. For the audience,
Thank you.
We again meet at 12 o'clock, where we have a session from Preeti Vyas from Mumbai. So we'll all look forward to have you all there. So we'll be logging in at 5 remaining to 12. Okay, thank you so much for being there.